24 years, I have sat across from literally thousands of children, families in need, families that were struggling. I've helped families find school supplies, clothing, and even a place to live. I've supported children in crisis and families that were facing circumstances that they could not have ever foreseen for their families. And when you do this kind of work long enough, you discover something. There are some stories that you never forget. There are people that walk into your life and somehow their story becomes part of your story. I never imagined that one day a child would walk into my counseling office and then eventually walk into my home and become my daughter. And her name is Serenity. Today, I'm going to tell you our story. But first, I want to tell you about a butterfly. Many years ago, a man was walking through the park and something caught his attention. Hanging from a low branch was a small cocoon. As he drew closer, he noticed movement. Inside, there was a beautiful butterfly struggling to emerge. So the man sat down by a nearby bench and watched. The butterfly pushed, then rested, then pushed again. The opening seemed impossibly small. At times, the man said, "There's no progress here." And he found himself rooting for this tiny creature. "Come on, little butterfly, you can do it." An hour passed, then another. The butterfly seemed exhausted. Its movements became slower, and the man began to worry. Maybe it's stuck. Maybe it can't get out. Maybe if I don't help it, it will die. So, wanting to spare the butterfly from any more suffering, he took out his small knife. Carefully, gently, he widened the opening of the cocoon. And immediately, the butterfly slipped free. The man smiled. He was relieved. It felt great. He had helped. And then he waited. He waited to see the wings expand. He waited to see the butterfly emerge and fly. But he waited and waited, but the butterfly never flew. Its body remained swollen. Its wings remained small and shriveled. The man's intentions had been good. His heart was in the right place, but there was something he didn't understand. The struggle, it had a purpose. That difficult journey through the narrow opening of the cocoon was part of the process that prepared the butterfly's body and wings for flight. The very thing that was a seeming problem was actually preparing it to fly. Now, before I go any further, I want to make something very clear. Homelessness, not good. Hunger is not good. Instability is not good. Trauma is not good. And no child should ever have to wonder where they're going to sleep at night. The lesson of that story is not suffering for good people. The lesson is that when people are facing circumstances they should never have to face, then there's a profound difference in rescuing someone and walking beside them to help them develop strength, resources, stability, and confidence to move forward. I know that because I watched it happen in the life of someone that I love very much, Serenity. This is a picture of Serenity when I first met her. It was 2012. School had just started when I was working at Conroe High School, and I received a request for a schedule change. And so I went and found her in her classroom and met her in the hallway and introduced myself to her. And I told her I couldn't make the change because she missed the deadline. That was it. Nothing remarkable. She seemed like a happy-go-lucky kid. I had absolutely no idea that our lives had intersected for a reason. A few weeks later, there was a knock on my office door, and there she was again. This time, she wasn't the happy-go-lucky girl I remembered from the hallway. She had a friend with her, and she looked scared. She sat down in my office, and I found out she was homeless. She was living in the Lodge Motel on I-45 with her mother and another family. One room. The kids got the bed, and the parents slept on the living room couch. As she began telling me her story, I realized homelessness was only part of what this child had been carrying. When Serenity was 5 years old, her mother was injured in a work-related accident, and she became addicted to the prescription medication she had been given for pain. As addiction took over more and more of her mother's life, instability took over Serenity's life. They moved from place to place. 3 different states. How many places do you think they lived? More than 20. 20 different homes, or if you could call them homes. Sometimes motels, sometimes with people she had just met or barely knew. Sometimes homeless shelters, like the one here in Conroe, the Salvation Army. She had stayed there. Drugs were everywhere. There were times when Serenity was expected to help people sell their drugs so that there would be money for rent. Her mother made her steal from stores so that they could have basic things like toothpaste, feminine products, a brush. Think about that for a moment. She was a child, but her circumstances had forced her to live in this adult world where she was essentially parentified. And yes, sometimes she made poor choices, but how could she possibly know what good choices look like? She had learned how to survive. And somehow in the middle of that chaos, this little girl still believed there had to be something more. She believed there was a bigger plan for her life. And before she ever walked into my office that day, she had done something incredibly brave. She told a friend what was going on. And the mother of that friend and Serenity made a call to CPS, to Child Protective Services. She told them everything. And within 24 hours, she was removed from her mother's care and placed at our Bridgeway Youth Shelter here in Montgomery County. And then a few days after that, she was back in school. She was still scared, but I noticed something different. There was a little more calm, a little more confidence, maybe just a tiny glimpse of hope that things could change. As Serenity began to open up to me, when I would check on her, something else began happening to me. Something I still cannot fully explain. I think it's divine. From the first time I learned what was happening in her life, I had this overwhelming feeling that I was supposed to help her, but more than I usually help kids. It wasn't logical. It wasn't something I had experienced with any other student. At that time, I had come home plenty of times and told Scooter, I just want to bring this one home. But I never did. Whenever I was around Serenity, I would get this feeling that would start at the tips of my toes, and it went all the way to the top of my head. And I just knew there was a reason this child had come into my life. So I continued mentoring her, And after several months, I went home and I told Skeeter about my feelings and about this kid who was at Ridgeway Youth Shelter with no next of kin, no one to call to come and help her. And I told him about the feeling that I couldn't shake, and his eyes got big as saucers. He's like, "Oh, you've had some ideas before, but this one's a doozy." And I said, "Would you like to meet her?" And so he agreed, and we went and picked her up from the youth shelter to take her on a Saturday with our family. And I knew that I wasn't the only one and that this was divine, because we were coming back from Ridgeway, we were driving, and we weren't saying much. And I said, "Well," and then I looked over, and Skeeter had his hands on the steering wheel, and tears were running down his face. He felt it too. So we began the process of becoming licensed foster parents through the state of Texas. And eventually I sat down with Serenity and told her about this feeling that we've had. I told her I couldn't shake it. And then I asked her the question that would change both of our lives and the lives of our family forever. "Would you like to come and live with my family?" And just like that, my student became my foster daughter. I'll never forget that first day she walked into our home. I'm not going to tell the real funny story about what happened when she walked in. Let's just say Skeeter had just gotten out of the shower and didn't know anybody was there. Don't worry, he was covered up, but he wasn't really wanting his first meeting with her to be wrapped in a towel. Sorry, honey. It's like a core memory for her. Yeah. So I remember looking at her and knowing without a doubt that this was part of God's plan. I told her something that day. I said, "Serenity, there is no mistake about this. God has big plans for you." And I don't think any one of us understood just how big those plans would be. When Serenity first came to live with us, she didn't know what a healthy family looked like. Chaos had been normal, survival had been normal. She had never even gone to a restaurant that had a sit-down menu with a waiter. She didn't know how to order off of a menu. Suddenly, there was stability, there was consistency, expectations, consequences. There were people asking where she was going. There were people who noticed when she wasn't okay. There was safety. There was a family. This is her graduation from Conroe High School in 2014. She began to discover something. Life didn't have to always be about surviving. She could begin building one. And she did. Serenity graduated from high school in 2014 at 16 years old. Then she went to college. She became a mother. And at 20 years old, she graduated from college. Can you guess what her college major is? Marriage and family studies, of course. You can't make this stuff up. The little girl who had grown up without any understanding about what a healthy family could look like chose to study families. But her story didn't stop there. Today, Serenity works as the foster and homeless youth liaison for the Huntsville Independent School District. Let that sink in. A little girl who once walked into her school counselor's office, scared and homeless, now goes to work every day helping children who are standing where she once stood. And Serenity has created the family she once dreamed about having as well. She's married to Alejandro, and they have 3 beautiful children, 3 beautiful grandchildren. Somewhere along the way, I learned a term that finally gave me language for what I had watched happen in Serenity's life. And it is true for anyone that has truly been resilient in the face of crisis. It's called a transitional character. Have any of y'all heard that term before? It's a transitional character. A transitional character is someone who, in a single generation, changes the course of a family. Someone who looks at what has been handed to them and says, it stops with me. The addiction, the chaos, instability, the trauma, the patterns that have traveled from one generation to another, it stops with me. And then that person creates something different for the generations to follow. That is Serenity. Serenity didn't just survive her childhood, she changed the trajectory of her whole family. Her children are growing up with something different because their mother decided that what came before her would not determine what came after her. And there's something else Serenity taught me. For years I thought we were helping her. We opened our home, we became foster parents, we gave her stability, but over time I realized I was wrong about one thing. Because God didn't just bring Serenity into our lives so we could change hers. He brought her into our lives to change ours. She didn't remain my foster daughter, though it did take her a while to call me mom. A long time, actually. Became a sister to my children. And what started with a prompting I couldn't explain became one of the greatest blessings of my life. And that brings me back to the butterfly. Because after all these years, I've come to understand something about helping people. There's a difference between rescuing someone and empowering someone. Rescuing someone, like the man did with the knife, says, let me do this for you. Empowering says, I believe you can do this, and I'm going to walk beside you while you do it. Rescuing, it focuses on the immediate problem. But empowering asks, what will this family, what will this child need tomorrow, and next month, and next year? And what will help them become stable? What will help them become independent? What will help them believe in themselves? And that's what I believe is so powerful about Family Promise of Montgomery County. Family Promise understands that homelessness isn't solved by just putting a roof over somebody's head. Sometimes the work begins before a family even ever becomes homeless. Family Promise provides prevention and diversion services that can help a family before they reach that crisis point. And then if a family does become homeless, Family Promise is there. They're there with shelter, they're there with meals, transportation, case management, compassion, and more. Probably the most important thing to all of us, is having someone in your corner. Someone saying, we're here. You're not facing this alone. Let's figure out what comes next. And when that family finally moves into housing, Family Promise doesn't just simply wave goodbye and wish them luck. They continue walking beside them through the stabilization programs. They tap into resources that already exist throughout our community. Many of you who offer those services are sitting here in this room. And they unite people around one fundamental belief. Strong families build strong communities. Family Promise doesn't just provide shelter, they provide a pathway. They provide resources without removing responsibility. Support without removing dignity. Guidance without taking away ownership from the families that they serve. They don't cut open the cocoon. They walk beside families as they emerge from it. And because of that, families don't simply survive a crisis. They develop strength and stability to move on from it, and maybe they change what happens in the next generation too. Because somewhere in Montgomery County today, there is another Serenity. Maybe she's 10 or 15. Maybe tomorrow morning she's sitting at a desk in one of our Conroe ISD schools. She may laugh with her friends, seem happy-go-lucky like the girl I met in the hallway. She may turn in her homework and look perfectly okay, and no one looking at her may know that she doesn't know where she's sleeping that night. Or maybe there's a mother somewhere in our community tonight sitting in her car after children have fallen asleep, trying to figure out how she's going to keep a roof over their heads. Maybe she's one paycheck away, one medical emergency away, one unexpected expense away, one crisis away, and she doesn't need someone to look at her and see failure. She needs someone to look at her and see possibility. Someone willing to say, I believe you can do this, and while you do, you don't have to do it alone. I know everybody can't do what Skeeter and I did and bring a foster child into their home. But every single one of us can be a part of creating a community where people that are facing homelessness do not have to face it alone. We can provide shelter, we can provide meals, transportation, resources, the hope. Because after all, what is hope without how? We can become a part of someone's story, and we may never know how far the impact of that one act will travel. Because the family we help today may raise children who never experience homelessness. And one of those children may someday help another child, like Serenity's doing in Huntsville ISD, and another, and another. And that's how generations change. And that's how communities change. All those years ago, I looked at that scared little girl and said, God has big plans for you. And at the time, none of us really knew what those plans would look like. But today, I get to see them unfolding, and they're still unfolding. The homeless child became a high school graduate. The high school graduate became a college graduate. The child who had never been shown what a healthy family looks like became a wife and mother. And the student who once walked into the counselor's office needing someone in her corner became the person standing in the corner of other homeless children. I've been talking about Serenity as though she were somewhere else, but she's not. She's right here. Serenity, will you come up and join me for a moment? She didn't know I was going to do this. Stand by me. This is going to embarrass you. I want everyone to take a look. This is a transitional character. This is what it looks like when someone decides what happened to her will not determine what happens through her. Serenity, you didn't just survive your story. You changed the story. And I hope you know that I'm incredibly proud of you. There's one more part of the story I want you to understand. While Serenity was becoming part of our family, we were becoming part of hers. And she changed us, like I mentioned. My husband and my daughter are both here as well today. So you guys come up as well. One of my boys, both my boys are in college. They couldn't skip class. It was the first day of class today. So we have 4 children. This is my, we say Serenity's the youngest because she was born into our family last. So she's only 12. This is actually my oldest child, Serenity. Olivia. And I won't say it's Peter's age. It's Peter. I just want to, you can see my boys, they're a little older now, but I'll go back to this picture here. If you had shown me this picture of my life 14 years ago, on the day that a frightened teenager knocked on my counseling office door, I never could have imagined it. But that's the thing about becoming part of someone else's story, is you rarely know where the story's going to lead. And a relationship can become a family. A family can change the trajectory of a child, and one child can change the trajectory of generations. Serenity found her wings. But look what happened next. She didn't fly away. She turned around and started helping other children find theirs. Somewhere in Montgomery County, there's another Serenity, another child, another mother, another father, another family whose story, they're still being written. And they need transportation, they need a meal, they need resources or guidance. Someone who believes in them. Someone willing to walk beside them and say, you don't have to do this alone. 14 years ago, I told this woman, God has big plans for you. And I will say this, Serenity, I think he's just getting started. In fact, I'm pretty sure she has a keynote coming up. Where are you speaking? Speaking at the McKinney-Vento conference, which is each of us has an opportunity to be a part of the story today. Because when we strengthen one family, we can change a generation. And we can change our community. That is the promise. And that is the possibility. And that is what it means to give families wings to soar. Thank you.